I'm Paul Edwards. I'm a self published horror author and, first and foremost, a monster kid. Today I'm reading Horror Monsters Magazine, issue number 3 from 1962. I thought some of you might like to look through this magazine with me, just in case you don't own your own copy of Horror Monsters Magazine, issue 3 from 1962. And together we can see what kind of vintage monster goodness is in here. Horror Monsters Magazine is ready and waiting for us. Already you can tell this is going to be one of those magazines that makes a lot of jokes and puns at the monster's expense, because it says Scream Age Monster Maker and The Stein of Frankenbride. So they may not be taking the subject too seriously here. But being 1962, I can tell you already it's going to be replete with vintage monster pictures. Horror Monsters Pinup Parade. Do you know what movie that monster is from? That is It, The Terror from Beyond Space. Yeah, looks like we got some good things here. We got Ghost of Frankenstein. We've got the Ymir from 20 Million Miles to Earth. We've got the Hammer version of The Mummy. And Bloodlust. Bloodlust is an uncredited film version of The Most Dangerous Game. I know all about that because I had one of my books is based on The Most Dangerous Game, at least in part. But we'll talk about that when we get to the article. The Mask. No, not the Jim Carrey movie. There we go. Pretty creepy. Whoa, even more creepy. Nice. Well, you got a pretty good photo spread on this movie. Ghouls and Gags. In these magazines, they would show pictures from real monster movies, but then put joke captions on them. Like, goodness, I do need a manicure. Or, I demand that a zipper be put on this fly. Really? This is a little funny. This is from Revenge of the Creature. Let's see, size 16 neck, and you'll need a suit, socks, and shoes, too. All right, this one's okay. What wise guy pulled my hat down over my eyes? Come on, that's a little funny. The Body Snatchers. Not Invasion of the Body Snatchers. This is direct from Mexico. The Body Snatchers. Mad scientist turns dead men into living monsters. Well, they don't skimp on the pictures in this magazine. They're pretty good with the pictures. The Stein of Frankenbride. What a surprise. It is a joke article. The heartwarming story of a drunken wedding. But you do get some actual Frankenstein pictures in here, and that's always good. You know, the character that Dwight Fry played, the hunchbacked assistant to Dr. Frankenstein, was not named Igor. He was named Fritz. The idea of Dr. Frankenstein's assistant being Igor is actually a retcon. They only started that in the movie Son of Frankenstein, and they pretended that Igor had been there all along. You know, the Frankenstein lab props from Universal Studios floated around Hollywood for years and years after the original Frankenstein came out, and they appeared in a lot of Frankenstein movies. All right, monster kids could send in pictures of their makeup or homemade costumes and try to get published in the magazine, like these kids did. Nice. Nice. Yikes. I was a Scream Age monster maker. This is an article on Paul Blaisdell. It's actually an interview with Paul Blaisdell. Paul Blaisdell made a lot of monsters that were sort of over the top. A good example of which is It Conquered the World. This movie was a completely serious sci-fi movie that went along pretty well until you actually glimpsed the monster. And then when you see the monster, you know, you can't help but laugh. I kind of liked the Saucermen from Invasion of the Saucermen, but they were over the top. And he also made, and I'm sure it'll be in here, the She Creature. We'll find it. Whoa, look at that, from Invasion of the Saucermen. See, a lot of Blaisdell stuff is kind of goofy, but I really like the Invasion of the Saucermen aliens. Yeah, very freaky. You know, it's not easy to do these with only one hand because I'm holding the camera in the other hand. So forgive my delay there. Yep, there's the She Creature. Now, I admit, when I was a kid, I did find the She Creature scary. As an adult, I've never really understood a lot of the design elements here, especially the fins on the shoulders. That just doesn't make sense to me. I understand it's supposed to be a sea creature, but this is not going to propel it any if it's swimming. She Creature again. It, the Terror from Beyond Space. Now that is a good monster. Photo quiz. Do you know what movie each of these pictures is from? Let's try this one. Where's this from? Is it The Four Skulls of Jonathan Drake? The Red Skeleton Show, like Red Skelton, the comedian, Charlie's Haunt, or The Dead Rise? Or this one, is it from Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, Hound of the Baskervilles, The Wolfman, or Harry Truman Attacks Washington? So they'll give you a couple of joke answers and then a couple of possibly serious choices. And then if you get stumped, the answers are right here, upside down. Yeah, see, I'm pretty sure this is not from Return to Peyton Place. Yeah, that just doesn't seem right. A Horror Monsters Travelogue. Up the River Styx to the Glue Factory. Or, Sticks and stones may break your bones, but skeletons will never hurt you. You know, just the other day I said to my wife that the Rolling Stones should have been on tour with the band Styx, because then they could have called the tour Sticks and Stones. And she just turned and walked away from me without saying anything. Can you blame her? I thought it was kind of funny. Whoa. Okay. So, double feature, The Devil's Hand and Bloodlust. I want to focus on Bloodlust. This is an unauthorized movie version of a short story called The Most Dangerous Game, which was a short story printed by Richard Connell in a magazine back in the 1920s. Even if you've never seen The Most Dangerous Game or even heard of it, I guarantee you know the basic story because it's been redone and repackaged so many different ways. It's a story about a man who is stranded on an island where there's this crazy big game hunter who's tired of hunting for things like tigers and lions and now is hunting the most dangerous game, people. He's hunting people for sport on his island. That is the source for all the times you've seen that done on TV shows and in movies. And Bloodlust is a film version of it from the 1960s, starring the guy who played the father on the Brady Bunch when he was a bit younger, Robert Reed. Now, one of the reasons I know all about The Most Dangerous Game is that my first published novel, Mourner's Woods, is inspired in part by The Most Dangerous Game. In my novel, it's high school kids, and they lure a classmate out into this forbidden forest, Mourner's Woods, to party on Halloween night because they plan to sacrifice her to an internet monster that they've discovered, which of course this is based on the Slender Man case in Wisconsin. But once they get out into the forest, they discover that the intended victim is not nearly so helpless as they thought, and they soon discover that they are the hunted, and she's the one hunting them. So I was heavily inspired by The Most Dangerous Game in that, and I even named my main villain, Beth Connell, after Richard Connell, the author of The Most Dangerous Game. Yeah, in this version, they added a little more with the brutish henchman. That wasn't such a thing in the short story. That's something they used to fill out the movie here. There's the young Robert Reed. Of course, here's our crazy big game hunter. And it's no surprise what happens to him. If you've ever seen any version of this story, you know that the hunter becomes the hunted, and it doesn't end well for the bad guy. Oh, and then we're running a little short here because part of the magazine is missing. So they've just started the crazy ads, which are always everyone's favorite part of a monster magazine. And then it looks like the back cover and the last couple of pages were torn out, and some kid has taped on here, the previous owner has taped on here a piece of cardboard to serve as a back cover, and even has baseball information, the Dodgers, spelled the way that a child would spell it. So maybe you can tell what year the kid wrote this by this. That's not my area of expertise. But there you have it. There's Horror Monsters issue 3 from 1962. If you enjoy vintage horror and classic monsters, check out my book series, the Mourner's Woods books. They're available on Amazon.com, 99 cents for an ebook They're also available in paperback and in audiobook. I have different monsters in different books and a completely different cast of characters in each book, so you never know who's going to survive or not survive to the end of each novel. So my name again is Paul Edwards. My books are the Mourner's Woods books on Amazon. Thanks for spending some time going through Horror Monsters issue 3 with me. And I will see you in Mourner's Woods.